So we're going to focus on the power of sleep and deliberate rest, but some lessons learned from elite athletes as well as high performers. But let's begin with what is sleep. And sleep is more than nothing. A lot of cases you might think as I fall asleep and nothing happens, other than maybe a bad dream, maybe you have to go to the bathroom, but in actuality, a lot's going on when you're asleep. So kind of some of the day residue is being processed. Neural connections are being made. Metabolism is occurring. So sleep actually is an active state. You just don't remember all the activity that's occurring. So let's take a look at this particular beast, if you will, but looks very, very calm and relaxed while sleeping. Sleep is a dynamic and regulated set of behavioral as well as physiological states during which many processes occur. And many of these processes focus upon health as well as well-being. So that's true not just for these very powerful animals, but it's true for you as well. So now let's look at the opposite side of the equation, which is sleep deprivation. So when you focus on sleep deprivation, this title comes from Inc. magazine. Inc. magazine is not a health magazine. It's focused on entrepreneurs and innovators and fast companies. Here's the question: why sleep deprivation is worse for you and your business than you think. So in the next slide, I'm going to show you some of the deprivations that occur, not just to you as a person, but also to the business. So here's the key. When you really take a look at what's normal with regard to sleep, it shows you that by each different age, the amount of sleep that's normal, that's required, not get by, changes. So let's go to a newborn. Newborns sleep a lot, so 14 to 17 hours a day. Let's go to the older adult, 65 plus, 7 to 8. So that's normal. So let's go to maybe teens, 8 to 10. So it's very important, depending upon your age, is that you get what's developmentally appropriate amount of sleep. The quantity of sleep is essential, as well as the quality of sleep. So let's imagine that you don't get the right quantity of sleep or quality of sleep. So what are the impacts? One impact is poor logical reasoning. So things don't make sense. You don't make sense. One is decreased alertness. So you're not as attuned. You're not as engaged. One is slowed reaction time. So things are moving slower physically, and also things are moving slower from a cognitive point of view, and impaired memory. You just become more forgetful. And faulty decision making. So you don't make the high-quality decisions like you used to. And also you make more errors and mistakes. So those are some of the negative impacts and the deprivations that occur that impact you, your colleagues, your customers, your clients, and your business. So here's a takeaway, or a key, if you will. Invest in 1/3 of the day to optimize the other 2/3. And what is that investment? So for most adults, you're supposed to get 7 to 9 hours. So 24 hours, if you take an average of 8 there, is you really have to invest by making sure that you get high quality and the right amount of sleep that's developmentally appropriate. So that way, if you make that investment, you can optimize the other 2/3 of your day. Now let's focus on goal setting. Because it sounds easy, sleep 7 to 9 hours, that way you can optimize the other 2/3. But for a lot of folks, they struggle with that. Why? Because sleep is not a priority. So there was a survey that was done that looks at American priorities. Fitness and nutrition, about 35% of the U.S. population says, yes, that's a goal. Work, again, about 1/3 of the U.S. population says work, career, that's a goal. Hobbies and interests, close to 1 out of 20. Sleep, 10%, not many. So for many of us, sleep is not a priority. And if you think about it, if you're not getting the right amount of sleep or not high quality sleep, will it impact your hobbies and interests? In a negative way? Yes. Will it impact your work performance in a negative way? Yes. Will it also impact your fitness and nutritional goals as well as outcome? The answer is, again, yes. So it has to be a priority. If it's not a priority, nothing's going to happen. So here's another key to success. Add your bedtime and your wake-up time to your calendar, particularly your wake-up time. So let's imagine for most of us we will have a kind of a work week wake-up time and a weekend wake-up time. So my general wake-up time for the work week is between 5 and 5:30 a.m. For the weekend, it's not much longer. It's about maybe 6:30. So what does that mean? If I want to feel well rested, if I want to have that quantity of sleep, then I need to make sure that I'm in bed and asleep by about 9:30. So that way, for me, I need 8. That way I get 8. So it's very important that in your calendar and your smartphone that you put in your wake-up time, and then from your wake-up time, back it up to 8 hours, and that's the time you should be going to bed. If you fail to do that on a regular basis, you're not going to be able to make that investment. So that's why scheduling is important, and the scheduling links to individual performance. So let's look at some of the habits, the sleep habits of elite athletes as it relates to sleep. So what they do is they mix up deliberate practice, 10,000 hours, and deliberate rest, 12,500 hours. But they do this mix throughout the day. So where are these hours coming from? Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote the book Outliers, and he looked at people that are high performers. And what he found is that they engage in deliberate rest, they engage in deliberate practice, and you learn later, they engage in sleep. And those hours shows you the amount of times over a long period of time. So what do they also do? They work 80 to 90 minutes with intensity and focus. And then what? Then they take about a 30-minute break with intentionality. So we are designed, and elite athletes know, elite performers know, I can really be super focused, super productive, 80, 90 minutes, about an hour and a half, and then I back off. And when I back off, I engage in deliberate rest. So it's that cycling that occurs rather than plodding through and pushing through for 8 to 10 hours. And it's also best if you get outdoors as well and you engage in some physical activity. So now let's look at elite athletes. So on the day before the big game or the big performance, maybe you're a concert pianist, but the day before the performance, maybe you're an actor or actress, the day before the commercial shoot, maybe you're going to sit for the LSAT exam, or maybe this big board presentation or investor pitch, is you want to get 9 to 10 hours of sleep. And that technique is called sleep extension. Because what they have found is the day before, if you engage in sleep extension, then what happens is your performance is a lot higher. So think about that. The night before the big event, where you really have to perform, a lot's counting on it, is go for some sleep extension. And if you are injured in some way, you really want to make sure that you get your 7 to 9 hours for full recovery. Because remember, I said sleep is more than nothing. The healing process is occurring while you're sleeping. So let's take a look at this title from the British Journal of Sports Medicine. Fatigue and Underperformance in Athletes, the Overtraining Syndrome. So if you overtrain or if you overwork, you will injure yourself. You will not have the ability to recover. So it's very important to engage in deliberate rest. Purposeful, deliberate rest. So let's think about the attributes of this particular man. And this is a real story about a real man. So let me go over the particular achievements of this one man, and I want you to tell me how many hours per day did the man accomplish these activities in terms of his normal working routine. He modernized the banking system in the United Kingdom. He popularized the term Neolithic based upon his writings. He served in Parliament for 2 decades. And he wrote 29 books, including a few bestsellers. And lastly, he advocated for Britain's bank holidays. So on average, how many hours a day would you say that this man worked, who accomplished all of this? How many hours a day would you say? And if you said like 10 or 12, you're absolutely wrong. If you said 7 or 8, you're wrong too. But if you said 4 to 6, you're right. You're thinking, how in the world could this man only work 4 to 6 hours a day on average and accomplish all of that? So it goes back to those cycles. Because what he did is he worked 80 to 90 minute cycles, deliberate rest. 80 to 90 minute cycles, deliberate rest. He also front-loaded a lot of the work to the beginning of the day and engaged in some menial tasks towards the latter part of the day. So let's look at deliberate rest and what it is. It's purpose-driven. So rest is not something the world gives us. It's never been a gift. It's never been something that you do when you've finished everything else. So rest is not like a leftover. Rest has to be deliberate. It has to be scheduled. So you have to take it, because remember, it's not a gift. So you have to take it and steal it, if you will, from other activities. So what are 3 easy ways to rest? One is to unplug. Unplug from what? Work expectations, social expectations, family expectations, as well as commitments. Resting is not being flooded by information, because if you're flooded by information, you're excited about the information, you're going to be in a state of hyperarousal. If you're flooded with information and it's anxiety-provoking, then you're going to get all worked up. You're not resting. You're hyped up. You're doing something different, but you're not resting. And enjoy what I would call a mini vacation. So for me, a mini vacation is I may look outside. I might take a walk. I may chat with somebody. And these things may last for 5 or 10 minutes. But what happens after I do the rest, and even if it's 20 minutes, then I'm ready to go. And I'm ready to go for another 90, 120 minutes in a very focused, intense way. And what do I do after that? Then I unplug. The other way is to absorb your full self into something that's completely different. So that's the key. Yep. So say, for example, you're working on a spreadsheet. Then you say, I'm going to put the spreadsheet aside. Now I'm going to work on a Word document. That's not rest. You're switching from one activity to another. So it has to be something that's completely different. Completely different. So imagine this. It's the fall. And you move away from your cubicle, and then you go outside and you just look at the bench or you sit on the bench. That's something that's completely different. The air is different. The smell is different. The feel is different. The look is different. And if you get fully absorbed in that and you really focus on the leaves, you focus on the colors, you focus on the sounds, then that's deliberate rest. And you can get a lot of value from this for only 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. You're not wasting time because you're refueling, you're recharging. And don't expect somebody to give it to you. You have to take it. And you have to steal this important activity from other activities. So let's talk a little bit about chronotypes. So a chronotype is kind of your biological set, if you will. Some people are like morning people, some people are evening people, and a lot of people are in the middle. So I happen to be a morning person. So given that I'm a morning person, I make sure that those activities that require focus, concentration, decision-making, that I try to front load those. If I was an evening person, I would push those to the evening. So the takeaway for you is remember to rest deliberately, not after you've done everything else, and typically after at least 120 minutes, and find out what your chronotype is. So if you hit that link, then it will take you to an assessment where you can determine what your chronotype happens to be. After determining your chronotype, then you can really exercise, if you will, or exploit the power of the time of day. The power of the time of day. So let's take a look at this graph. So if you'll note, you have the time from 7 all the way up to 9 p.m. Then you have emotional balance. That's really how well composed you happen to be. So let's say you wake up at 7 o'clock. So at 7 o'clock, if you note in terms of your emotional balance, it's not quite there. So it's probably not the most important time to have that tough conversation or to really engage with people. But you know, it continues to go up and up and up, and it reaches a peak at 11 o'clock. And then it begins to dip until 5 p.m. And then it rises again from 5 to about 9. So imagine you were going to go to a job interview, or you were going to conduct a job interview. When would you want that interview scheduled? Would you want it scheduled before 11 a.m., or between 11 and 5, or after 5 p.m.? Suppose you're going to have a critical, crucial conversation with someone. Would you want it between 7 and 11? Or maybe 1 to 5, or after 5. So for those crucial, critical conversations where you have to have emotional composure, is 7 to 11 is optimal. Really 12 to 5 is not optimal, and after 5. That goes back to the power of the time of day. So what's the takeaway? Schedule your important meetings, your job interviews, and crucial conversations before lunch, because most of us are not necessarily working after 5 p.m. Well, some crucial conversations you can have after 5 p.m. So are you under the influence at work? Not drinking, a different type of influence. The performance change between the daily high point and the daily low point can be equivalent to the effect on performance of drinking the legal limit of alcohol. So what's the high point and the low point? So if you look at this graph again, we have two high points. So at about 11:30, we have a high point, and then at about 9 p.m., we have a high point. When we first get up at 7, that's a low point, and then around maybe 2-ish, we have a low point, and then looks like around 4, we have a low point. So let's read it again. The performance change between the daily high point and the daily low point can be equivalent to the effect on performance of drinking the legal limit of alcohol. That's extremely important for you to remember. So if you want to optimize your performance, if you really want to focus on the power of the time of day, then remember that. And I would print out this slide, print it out, copy it, post it, so that way you really know how to leverage the power of the time of day. So let's focus on decision making as well as logical reasoning. So decision making is slower but more accurate in the morning. So think about that. So you want to go quick but wrong, or do you want to go slow but accurate? Decision making is faster but less accurate in the afternoon. So there are trade-offs here. So if you're a CPA, you want accuracy. So maybe you front load that. If you don't really need a lot of precise decision making, then maybe you push it in the afternoon. Logical reasoning is best done between 8 and 2 p.m. 8 and 2 p.m. So if you have a class or you're involved in an activity that involves a lot of logical reasoning, try to schedule it during that time. After 2 p.m., logical reasoning decreases linearly over time. So there's a stepwise function. It gets worse and worse and worse and worse over time. So you don't want to have your math classes after 2 p.m. You have your physics classes after 2 p.m., your analytics or programming classes after 2 p.m., because for the average person, your performance is going to drop. So what if you want to be more innovative and creative? When's the best time to do that? So the evidence is pretty clear. It's in the late afternoon. It's also in the evening. Why? Because when you feel less alert, you're actually more creative, because your inhibitions go down and you're less engaged. And also when you're not at your peak in terms of analytical reasoning and logical reasoning, you're more creative. So the optimal times are late in the afternoon or the early evening. So you can see from this, analytical skills and abilities, 8 to 2. After 2 p.m., a little bit more creativity and innovation. So if you have the ability to set your schedule, you want to make sure you set your schedule to really maximize the power of the time of day. So this one's a bit busy, so I'm going to walk through this a bit slowly. So you have a peak time of the day, 5 to 11. You have a trial, 11 to 5, and you have recovery from 5 to 11. So you can notice, let's look at the peak as an example. Optimal time for analytical tasks, analyzing data, writing reports, going through strategy proposals. And for the trial, what do you have? Optimal time for administrative tasks, answering routine, keyword routine email messages, making routine calls, filling out spreadsheets in kind of a mindless way, cleaning out your inbox. And then from 5 to 11, brainstorming, creating, designing, and innovating. So this generally holds true for everybody, although you might be an exception. So what's the takeaway? Identify which tasks you do best at which time of the day. So now let's summarize what we've talked about. 4 keys to enhance performance, productivity, satisfaction, and well-being. So one is invest in 1/3 of the day to optimize the other 2/3. Add your bedtime and wake-up time to your calendar, but which one really first is the bedtime. Remember to rest deliberately. Have a plan. Be intentional. Find out your chronotype. Click on that link, and it'll take you to the survey. Schedule your important conversations, your job interviews, and crucial conversations before lunch. Identify which tasks you do best at which times of the day, peak trial recovery, and blow up your schedule for you, and if you work in an office, to make sure that it's aligned with your circadian best. If you do some of these recommendations, your performance will be enhanced. But it's going to take some time. How much time will it take? Scientific studies say that it takes 66 days to develop a new habit, hence 66. But to begin to schedule some of these things does not take 66 days. You can schedule them now, but in order for the behaviors to actually become automatic, that's going to take about 66 days. So what I would like you to do now, before you do anything else, is go to your calendar and then establish what your particular wake-up time is going to be. And then also maybe write down some tasks that you have to do tomorrow and ask yourself should I do these in the morning, before lunch, or between like lunch and early evening, or in the late evening? Just take 2 or 3 tasks and schedule them out. So if you really want to function like elite athletes, if you really want to function even like special ops, it's important that you prioritize sleep, you prioritize deliberate rest to enhance your performance. Thank you.